Having returned from Karn Dûm with Golidir in tow, the man sits in his study absolutely crushed and depressed from the death of his daughter. We go across to see Laerdan, his friend, to see if there's anything that he can think of that we can do to restore the man to his original, more vibrant nature. He states that when Golidir was captured, items were taken from him, weapons and armor, and that they are on 3 emissaries. And if we can track those emissaries down and retrieve those items, it may restore him to his former, state of mind. The 3 emissaries can be found in a nearby fortress of the Angmarim named Barad Guraran. This consists of a central keep and several towers surrounding it. Generally, each one of those emissaries will be found in one of those towers. We make the journey to the evil fortress and cross through the maze of paths that lies in the ashen fields before it, searching for the 3 towers that the 3 emissaries will be in. In the first tower, Minas Agar, we run into Karstiona, the emissary from the Trev Duverdain, the evil hillmen of the North Downs. From her, we are able to collect Golidir's mail shirt whenever she is defeated. In the second tower, Minas Mar, we fight Prakum, the emissary from the goblin town of the Misty Mountains. Upon his defeat, we are able to retrieve Golidir's sword. This leads us to the last tower, where we come across the emissary, Laudi Golden Tongue, the emissary from the Dour Hands, here in the tower of Minas Angus. He is the toughest of all the fights, and upon his death we are finally able to retrieve the 3rd item of Golidir's shield. Laerdan examines the items and says that they are currently quite useless in their existing condition. He sends us down to Estelden, where the crafters live. There, Dervun says that he will work on the mail shirt, while he sends us across to the smith Toram to work on the shield and the sword. Toram tells us that the shield is not Golidir's shield, but a shield from the South Kingdom a long time ago. He says he will be able to repair it. However, the sword is beyond his craftsmanship, having been made by elves long ago. He therefore sends us to the one place where elf craftsmen of that quality may still reside, back to Rivendell. There, in the forges of Imladris, Master Elrond instructs his master smith, Hemodir, to attempt to reforge the sword. He does so successfully, and Lord Elrond rechristens the sword Dunakar, the Avenger of the West, in hopes that it will avenge the death of Lorniel and reawaken the spirit of Golidir. The plan is successful, as Golidir's spirit rekindles when he sees the beauty and the power of the weapons and the armor lying before him, and he reawakens and remembers his duty as a ranger and why he came here to the north in the first place. He then states that he believes that Mordorith can now be defeated, and that he wishes for us to accompany him to the gates of Karn Dûm to seek his revenge upon the false king. We make our difficult path through the keep of Karn Dûm, fighting many illusions and servants of the enemy, until finally in the throne room itself we confront Mordorith, the false king. A desperate and difficult battle ensues against this foul and powerful wraith, and it seems like all is lost, but slowly we whittle him down against the massive dread, until finally our combined efforts and the power of Dunakar bring him to his knees. The coward, desperately wounded, flees before us and leaves us alone in the throne room of Karn Dûm, a hollow and incomplete victory. We are not alone for long before a gate opens and an old woman named Sarah Oakhart enters the throne room. She stuns us, says that she is grateful for all the assistance that she has received from us recently, and that we have been a great help to her. Then she runs over, grabs the Palantir of Angmar from its stand, and flees out through a locked gate that we cannot enter. Now, Sarah Oakheart is another interesting character here. She is another one of these characters like Scourge and the Dour Hands that continues to pop up throughout the story. It's also another one that if you don't do both branches, if you don't do the elf and dwarf branch and the human and hobbit branch, you miss out on some of the appearances that she makes. But she has appeared from time to time in many of our adventures we've had. The last time we saw her was probably during the fight against the Blackwold bandits in Archet. After taking out the leader of the Blackwolds, Sarah Oakheart, we find her trapped in a cage inside of the bandit hideout, and she thanks us and then once again flees into the darkness after us having freeing her. And it's another example of the fact that y'all may think we've only seen her maybe once before, or possibly never, because I don't think she showed up in this retrospective. But it's because she usually shows up in the side quests, and being that this retrospective is pretty much just showing what's happened in the epic line here, this is making her first appearance. And you have to remember that I have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of side missions that obviously are not showing up in this retrospective, because they could be anything from going and killing 10 rats to gather materials for fireworks for Lobelia's Sackville-baggins to going to help collect items to reforge Gnarlo. She is an interesting character, and one that I'm sure we will find out more about in a while.
The gift of Dunachar, Avenger of the West, renewed Golodir's spirit, and with the sword he avenged the death of his daughter. But though Morderith was weakened, he was not destroyed, retreating to nurse his hurts and plot revenge. How will this help us in our struggles? Will Sauron maintain control, or will another power claim Angmar?
Golodir sends us back to Imladris to give word of what has happened and the fact that the Ranger expedition has survived to his chief, Aragorn. Aragorn is very happy to hear this. However, he is disturbed by the events involving the Palantir. He sends us to see Gandalf and to seek his counsel about all the events that have occurred. Gandalf is troubled by the events that have taken place in Angmar, and especially by this Sarah Oakheart woman. He states he has never heard of her before or come across her in any of his travels, and he finds it very troubling that she would not only know what a Palantir is, since there are very few in Middle-earth left anymore who know what they are, but that she would also seek to steal one. He bids us return back to the north to Angmar to find out from Golodir if any more word of this Sarah Oakheart has been had. Golodir states that yes, his scouts have seen her loitering about the southeastern tower of the fortress of Barad Gularon. He then asks us to go there, see if we can find Sarah, and find out what she is doing. We find Sarah outside the tower of Minas Deloth. She thanks us for all the assistance that we have given her over her travels, and states that she knows that we have many questions, but that if we will assist her one more time in traveling to the center of the keep here of Barad Gularon, that all our questions shall be answered. We assist Sarah in fighting our way through the fell creatures who guard the innermost chambers of the keep, until at last we reach one known as the Summoning Chamber. Going within it, we find a large room filled with evil spirits and Angmarim who all bow to Sarah as she passes down the aisle, including, most disturbingly, a Kargul waiting for us at the far end of the room. There, upon reaching of it, the creature known as Sarah Oakheart drops her guise and reveals her true form. She states that her name is Amarthiel, the Scourge of the North, champion of Angmar. She strides to the top of the stairs at the front of the summoning chamber, and there she summons and asks for the presence of Lord Sauron himself. The Great Eye appears and states that Amarthael has been quite bold to have gotten this far. He states that he will send the Lords of Umbar to Angmar to aid her, but that she had best not fail him, and that he will be watching her closely. Amarthael states that with the power of the Lords of Umbar, she will search down her lost lesser ring Narquil, and that with its power she will be undefeatable. As a sign of her disdain for us, she has us cast out from the tower rather than killed. Goladir is very disturbed to hear of what happened in Barad Gularan. He tells us that these Lords of Umbar are the Knights of Mordorith from far to the south, Black Númenóreans. He says that we must find out information about these knights, and that 3 places to try to gather some would be from Coombe in Breland, from Ostgurth in the Lone Lands, and from Estelden in the North Downs. Traveling to Combe, we speak to Constable Underhill, who tells us there is a new threat that has arisen in the Chetwood, and that their knight that we seek may be located among the remnants of the old Blackwood bandits. Traveling deep into the remnants of the fortresses of the Blackwolds, we found Baltair, the Knight of Mordor, sent as an emissary to this particular group of the foes of the Free Peoples. Fortunately, we are able to slay him and end this renewed danger to the people of the Brelands. Traveling to the Lone Lands, we are sent deep into the swamp of Harlog, where far in the back amongst the trolls and the orcs we find Neokal, the Knight of Mordorith, who was sent here as an emissary to unite them and the undead wights of the swamp into a force to attack the peoples of the Lone Lands. Fortunately, we are able to defeat him and end his threat as well. Finally, we travel back to Estelden. There, they tell us of a new threat that has arisen along their northern borders, near the entrance to Angmar. We travel there and find Cyrodiil, the emissary of the Knights of Mordorith, to the Hillmen. We are able finally to defeat him as well, and thus end his threat to the lands of the North Downs. We bring the news of the defeat of the Knights of Mordorith back to Goladir. He tells us he is very happy to hear that we have been so successful, and that he has been talking to his friend Laerdan, who seems to know more about Amarthael than anyone else. He sends us to him to speak with him and find what he can tell us. Laerdan says that yes, unfortunately he does know more about Amarthael than anyone else, but he says even he is surprised to find that she is still about, as he thought that she had been destroyed at the battles of Fornos centuries ago. He says that she will probably use the Palantir, which is apparently the stone of Osgiliath that was thought to have been lost in the Anduin long ago, to search for the ring Narquil, which once was the token of her power. He states that she will often need to be in contact with Sauron, and says therefore he believes that she will travel to the ancient city of Annúminas, where there in a high tower once stood one of the Palantirs, and that she could use that tower to search for her ring and confer with her Dark Lord. Laerdan then gives us the mission to travel to the west to Evendim, by the shores of the lake, where the ruined city of Númenós stands, once the capital of the northern kingdom of Arnor. There we are to find a Calenglad, a ranger who is the leader of the ranger band here guarding Númenós from predation of both Angmarum and the groups of bandits and tomb raiders that make their home in the area. Calenglad says that yes, the numbers of Angmarum have been growing in the area recently, and believes that it would be best to scout out the ruins. He sends us in a group of 5 rangers as a small scouting party to go into Annúminas and find out what is happening there. Within the ruined city, we come across Amarthael and a party of men of Mordor. She states that she will use the ruined city to find that which has been taken from her, and leaving one of the men to deal with us, she moves further into the depths of the town. We are able to defeat the man of Mordor, but we find that the city is full of Angmarim, too many for our small band to take care of, so therefore we are forced to retreat back to Calenglad.
Amarthael, the champion of Angmar, has now also become its regent in the absence of Mordirith. Under the lidless eye of Sauron, she has removed herself to the ruined city of Annúminas, seeking a power to strengthen her position. A dark time is coming for Eriador, a time which may only be averted through pain and grief.
Calenglad tells us that in our absence in the city, that the elf Laerdan has arrived from Angmar, and that he has come saying that we will probably need his aid in capturing Amarthael and preventing her from retrieving her lost ring, Narquil. Laerdan states that long ago Amarthael was the champion of the Witch King of Angmar and led his armies before her, and that all in the north quailed before her power. He says that she led the armies of Angmar against Fornos at the battle then, and nearly overcame the city if it had not been for the arrival of King Eonur out of the south, leading a great force of men and elves from Gondor. No one knows who it was, but some elf from Lindon defeated Amarthael and took the ring from her, and her spirit was vanquished, and she vanished from Middle-earth for a very long time. Laerdan sends word to Calenglad that if Amarthael has truly arisen, that even if Annúminas were to be lost to the Rangers forever, it would be worth it if we can prevent her from retrieving Narquil. Calenglad believes that this is a folly, and that allowing the Angmarim to have Annúminas would just give them a permanent foothold in the north from which they could strike the lands to the south. He will ask us, therefore, to go into Annúminas and to check with his scouts and find out what the force of Angmarim is truly like in the city. We find the ranger Fanaleg at the encampment of Echad Garthadir, deep in the city and high on a hill. He states that the numbers of Angmarim in Annúminas are overwhelming, and that is all that he and his band of rangers can do is to hold on to the one little section of the city that they hold. He sends us to check with 3 of his scouts who are patrolling different areas of the city to see whether or not any more Angmarim are flooding in. 2 areas in particular are of concern to him. Tokirian scouts and keeps an eye over a small postern gate off to the west side of the city. And out on the docks, Wonel keeps an eye out for arrivals via the lake. Visiting both locations, we are assured by the rangers posted guard there that for the moment, at least, they are quite quiet, and that no new arrivals have appeared for some time now. We return back to the camp, where Fanaleg tells us there are 3 battlefields within the city that are constantly changing hands. He says if they are of such importance to the Angmarim that they will fight and die for them over and over, that we must travel there and see if we can find orders on some of the people there so that we have a better idea of what it is the Angmarim are doing there. So he sends us to Gwaelban to the northeast, to the east to the battle site of Clorhir, and finally to Minelband on the highest level of the city. We return with the orders to Calenglad, since they are written in the Black Speech, to see if they can be translated. He tells us that while we were in the city, that his scouts discovered that Mordrembor, one of Amarthael's evilest and cruelest lieutenants, is on a mission that very night into the tombs of the kings that line the road going to the main route of Annúminas. He sends us with a small party of rangers to see if we can find out what Mordrembor is doing and to stop him if possible. We find the band of Angmarim searching the tombs, and through subterfuge, we are able to lure Mordrembor away from his bodyguards and capture him and bring him back to Calanglad's camp on Tinandir. Mordrembor is bound and kept prisoner within the keep, guarded by a ranger named Tedan. It is decided that we will show him the orders written in the Black Speech, and Calanglad says that he will translate them for us, or we will force him to translate them for us. He mocks us and states that the first set of orders says that emissaries have been sent to 3 groups around the lake to give them gold and gain their allegiance to Angmar. They are the bandits of Rantost. They are the Cairgrim, the beast men who live along the southern shores, and the wolf men, the Garadane, who live in the mountains and forests to the north. On the southern shore, along the road that leads into Anuminas, we find the first of the emissaries, Royberd, who has found that the Cairgrim are witless beasts and care nothing for gold. We are able to defeat him and eliminate him as a tool in Amarthiel's hands. The emissary Kalen we find on an island of Rantost out in the lake. He has already seen to the tomb robbers and has bought their service to his lord Amarthiel. We are able to take him out, and we are also able to defeat many of the tomb robbers as well. We find the final emissary returning from his business, Molkaluam. We are too late to stop him from enlisting the Garadane in the service of Angmar, but we do manage to defeat him so that he can cause no further mischief. We return to the keep, where Tedan keeps his lonely vigil over Mordrembor. He tells us that the entire time we were gone, that Mordrembor has been smirking and laughing and muttering to himself. Questioning the prisoner, he states that he has a message for Laerdan. He says to tell him that Amarthiel awaits for him in the tall tower of Barad Tiran, and that she will stand in judgment there over him. Laerdan shrugs off the message and tells us not to believe or listen to anything that Mordrembor says. Says that everything that he says is couched in lies and deceits in order to fool us. Upon taking his response to Mordrembor, Mordrembor laughs and tells us that an assault is now coming upon Anuminas, and that we had best seen to our ranger friends. Rushing back to the city, we find that the Tomb Raiders of Rantost have been bought to assault the city from the docks, so we help Gwonil fight off the attack from there. Then it is off to the west to the Postern Gate, where we find Torkirion and his band of rangers besieged from the Garadane who have come along the shore. Laerdan is not heartened by our victories. He states that he believes that this is essentially busy work, that Mordrembor is sending us off on diversions, while we know that Amarthiel is in the high tower with a palantir, searching for her lost ring. He tells us to go to Tedan and tell him once more to be wary of the words of Mordrembor, and that he himself will come soon to speak to him. We bring Tedan the good news, then turn and speak to Mordrembor once more. Mordrembor tells us that all is in naught, for that another black Númenórean, Guldacar, wields a mighty relic of Númenor, the Tan Morgul, and that once he is allowed to use it by Amarthiel, that it will bring doom upon the Dunedain, and that for now she is just toying with us for her amusement. We travel back once more to the high battleground of Minelbad, in the uppermost regions of the city. There we find Guldacar, and we are able to defeat him and take Tan Morgul from him and bring it back to Tinandir and the rangers there. Tedan takes the foul weapon and says that he will return it to Calanglad for us, and that Laerdan wishes to see us, as he has found out where the palantir is and has devised a method for us to retrieve it. He states, however, that once having attained the Palantir, that it has been corrupted by the dark forces, and that we will not be able to touch it. He says that back in Angmar, in his belongings, he has such a bag that will allow us to carry it safely. We therefore travel back to Gathforthnir and retrieve that bag from Goladir. Upon our return to Tinadir, we find that Laerdan is not in his room, and that there is a note pinned outside his door. In it, he claims that somehow he is responsible for Marthiel's evil, and that it is his duty to put an end to her. He states that essentially he sent us off on busy work to keep us from trying to stop him and from following him. He begs us that we do not follow him to Barad Tiran, as he says that he must do this job himself. Returning to Taydan and Mordrembor, Taydan tells us that Laerdan did come to speak with him, and that he gave him a break and therefore remained in the room with Mordrembor himself for some time. Speaking to Mordrembor, Mordrembor tells us that everything that has happened is the will of Amarthiel, that he was captured on purpose for this very reason, to come here and to poison the mind of Laerdan to go into the city alone. Calanglad is extremely distraught at the news, and tells us he has come to realize that Laerdan was correct, that even if we lose Anuminos, that Amarthiel must not retrieve the ring Narquil. He therefore gathers together a band, and we assault the city of Anuminos and make our way to the Tower of Barad Tiran. There we fight our way through the Guardians and to the very gate of the tower. There we find Laerdan and Amarthiel confronting one another. Laerdan is extremely surprised to see us, but uses the opportunity to distract Amarthiel and tells us to take the Palantir and to flee from the tower with it. We are able to grab the Palantir and to take it from Amarthiel's clutches, but unfortunately we are not able to rescue Laerdan, and we leave him behind as Amarthiel's prisoner.
Long have the rangers of the north guarded the ruins of Anuminas. When Amarthiel came, they struggled to repel her, and after a bitter battle managed to recover the Palantir. But victory came with a terrible price, and Amarthiel saw something in the Palantir which might lead her to Narquil.